They say being alone is a sign of failure, that if you have no friends, no constant messages, no one to share your plans with, something must be wrong with you. But the Stoics saw it differently. To them, solitude was not a curse to be escaped. It was an arena, a sacred battleground, where the strongest version of the self is forged. Marcus Aurelius, the emperor of Rome, ruled an empire surrounded by senators, soldiers, and servants. Yet every night, when the world went quiet, he wrote alone. No audience, no praise, just a man, a lamp, and his thoughts. And in that silence, he built a fortress. No enemy could breach a fortress of reason, virtue, and peace. Society glorifies connection, but fears stillness. We are taught to measure our worth by the company we keep, by the number of people who like us, follow us, or check in on us. But what if being alone isn't failure? What if it's training? Epictetus once said, "Do not seek for things to happen as you wish, but wish for them to happen as they do, and your life will flow smoothly." The absence of friends, the silence between messages, the weekends spent in your own company, they're not punishments. They are lessons. Each moment of solitude is life asking you one question. Who are you when there's no one watching? We live in an age that worships noise, constant updates, constant contact. But the Stoics believe that the man who cannot sit in silence cannot command his soul, because in silence you are exposed. You hear your real thoughts, not the borrowed opinions. You face the fears you've buried under distraction. You meet the version of yourself that you've been avoiding. When you strip away company, what remains is truth, raw, unfiltered truth. It can be uncomfortable. It can even be painful. But it is also the beginning of strength. Think about it. Marcus Aurelius didn't build wisdom in the Senate. He built it in solitude, facing the weight of his thoughts. Epictetus, born a slave, didn't find freedom through others, he found it within, by mastering his own mind. Seneca didn't become wise through applause, he became wise by wrestling with silence. So if you find yourself walking alone, stop thinking you're behind. You might just be ahead because you're standing in the same space every Stoic once stood, the arena of solitude. This season of your life, where the phone is quiet, the circle is small, and the nights feel long, is not a mistake. It's a call to rebuild. The world outside has slowed down so the world inside can grow. You are not being punished. You are being prepared. You see, loneliness and solitude are not the same. Loneliness is craving company. Solitude is claiming sovereignty. So, loneliness says, I'm missing something. Solitude says, I am becoming something. And maybe that's the real test of this generation. Can you be whole without witnesses? Can you build your inner fortress without applause? Can you find peace without posting it? Because here's the truth. If your peace depends on others, if your value collapses in silence, it isn't value. If your confidence fades when no one is around, it wasn't confidence, it was performance. The Stoics understood that true strength doesn't come from avoiding isolation, but from owning it, from sitting in the quiet until it no longer feels empty, from walking alone until your footsteps sound like music. When you embrace solitude, something shifts. You stop chasing validation and start cultivating virtue. You stop reacting to the world and start responding to it. You stop needing permission to exist and start living with purpose. This is how you become unshakable, not by surrounding yourself with people, but by standing firm in who you are when no one stands with you. So if you are alone right now, remember this. You are not broken. You are being built. You are not behind. You are in training. This silence is your classroom. This solitude is your forge. Use it. Don't run from it. Walk through it with open eyes and a disciplined heart. Because the greatest victories of life are not won in crowds. They're won in the quiet battles of the soul, where no one sees you, no one cheers you, but you keep fighting anyway. And when you rise from that solitude calmer, clearer, and stronger, you'll realize something powerful. You didn't just survive being alone, you mastered it. You turned solitude into strength. And that strength, quiet, disciplined, unbreakable, is what makes you unstoppable. The fortress you build in solitude will protect you for a lifetime. They say that our lives are defined by the relationships we build: our family, our friends, our partners, our mentors. But there's one relationship that determines everything else. One bond that, if neglected, will make every other connection fragile and fleeting. It's not with another person. It's with your own reason. The Stoics understood this deeply. Marcus Aurelius, a man who could summon armies with a word, still turned inward for guidance. He wrote, "Nowhere can a man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul." And Seneca, one of the wisest men of Rome, reminded us that he who has himself has everything. Because reason, your ability to think clearly, to choose wisely, to stay centered amid chaos, when everyone disappears, reason remains. When the messages stop coming, when the room goes silent, when no one validates you anymore, reason is still there, waiting. It doesn't flatter you. It doesn't lie to you. It challenges you. It questions your motives, your impulses, your illusions. And if you're brave enough to listen, it becomes your truest friend, the one that leads you through confusion back into clarity. But most people abandon this friend. They run from it because reason speaks quietly, and the world is unbearably loud. We fill the silence with distractions, noise, and validation from others. We chase attention instead of understanding. We mirror opinions instead of forming our own. And in doing so, we lose the most sacred relationship we were ever meant to have, the relationship with our rational soul. So let me ask you something. When was the last time you sat in silence long enough to hear your own mind? Not the opinions scrolling past your screen, not the voices of those who left you, not the echoes of who you were told to be. Just you, your thoughts, your judgments. That is where self-respect begins. Not from applause, but from awareness. Not from attention, but from alignment. The Stoics weren't against friendship or love, they valued them deeply. But they understood something our modern world forgets. If your peace can be taken away by the absence of another person, it was never peace, it was dependency. If someone's silence can shatter your calm, it means your center was never within you. It was built on them. And anything built on someone else will eventually crumble. Marcus Aurelius lost friends, children, advisors, but he never lost his reason, because that was the one thing he could control, and that's the foundation of Stoicism. Focusing on what's within your power. Not who stays, not who leaves, not who understands you, but how you think, how you respond, how you choose to act in every situation. Reason is what steadies you when the emotional storm hits. It's the anchor when you're drowning in uncertainty. It's the voice that says, "You are capable of handling this," when fear whispers otherwise. And here's the truth. You don't have to be emotionless to be rational. You just have to be guided by something higher than impulse. That's what makes you powerful, not the absence of feeling, but the mastery of it. When you walk alone, remember this. You are not empty, you are refining your most sacred bond. You are learning to stand beside your reason the way others stand beside their friends. To consult it before every reaction. To trust it more than your moods. To make decisions not out of fear, but out of principle. And the beauty of this relationship is that it never leaves you. It grows as you grow. It strengthens with every test. It protects you when no one else can. Because once you master your reason, you stop being swayed by external chaos. You stop chasing peace, you start embodying it. The Stoics would say, if your mind is disciplined, you are never truly alone. And that's the secret modern life hides beneath endless noise. That silence isn't emptiness, it's presence. It's the presence of your own strength. So the next time you find yourself without company, without distraction, without someone to lean on, remember, this isn't the end of connection. It's the beginning of the right one, the one that starts within. Marcus Aurelius called it retreating into the self, not to escape the world, but to return to it stronger, wiser, calmer. You don't need to isolate forever. You just need to rebuild your foundation so that when people come and go, your peace remains. Because in the end, friends will walk beside you for a while, and some will drift away. But reason will walk with you until your final breath. It will outlast every loss, every storm, every silence. And it will remind you of this truth. You were never meant to be ruled by what leaves. You were meant to be guided by what stays. And what stays is your reason. If your peace can be taken, it was never real peace. Build the kind that cannot be moved. There comes a time in everyone's life when you begin to see the truth about your relationships. You start realizing that not every bond is sacred, and not every friendship deserves to be carried forward. It sounds harsh, doesn't it? Because society teaches us that loyalty means holding on to people, to memories, to the idea that every connection must last forever. But the Stoics saw it differently. They understood that not all bonds are built on virtue. Some are built on fear, convenience, or the comfort of familiarity. And when you grow, those kinds of bonds begin to crumble, not because you've become cold, but because you've become clear. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "It is not death that a man should fear, but he should fear never beginning to live." And sometimes, beginning to live means letting go of what no longer aligns with your soul. Think about it. How many friendships in your life were born not out of shared values, but out of shared habits, shared pain, or shared distraction? How many people did you keep close not because they inspired you, but because it was easier than being alone? We cling to what's familiar, even when it keeps us small. We tolerate conversations that drain us because we fear the silence that comes after. But that silence is not punishment, it's clarity. It's life removing what you don't have the strength to release. The Stoics were not sentimental in the way modern culture romanticizes connection. They were discerning. They didn't confuse history with harmony. Just because someone has been in your story for years does not mean they belong in your next chapter. And just because a bond once served you does not mean it still does. Seneca warned, "What difference does it make how much you have? What you do not have amounts to much more." That applies not just to possessions, but to people. We often count the number of friends we have, but rarely measure the quality of their presence. Quantity looks impressive, but quality shapes your destiny. Sometimes the people you lose are simply those who cannot go where you're headed. It's not betrayal, it's evolution. You've outgrown the connection that once mirrored your old self. And that's okay. You are supposed to evolve beyond certain relationships. You are supposed to outgrow people who no longer speak your language of growth. Because when you start walking a path of virtue, discipline, and clarity, many will not understand you. Some will resist you. Some will call you distant. Some will label you cold. But the Stoics accepted this with grace. Epictetus said, "If you wish to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid." In other words, don't fear being misunderstood. Fear staying the same just to be accepted. Look around your life right now. Are there bonds that pull you away from your principles instead of toward them? Do you find yourself shrinking to stay likable? Do you silence your truth to keep the peace? Those are not friendships. Those are contracts of fear written by your need to belong. And every time you obey that fear, you trade a piece of your integrity for temporary approval. But the Stoic refuses to make that trade. He understands that peace bought with self-betrayal is not peace, it's paralysis. He walks alone, if necessary, because solitude with integrity is far greater than company without alignment. Letting go doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop clinging. It means you recognize that love can exist without attachment, and respect can survive without constant contact. It's not bitterness, it's clarity. It's saying, I release you not in anger, but in understanding, because where I'm going requires honesty, discipline, and peace. And I cannot carry what keeps me divided. That's not cruelty. That's courage. It takes strength to walk away from comfort for the sake of truth. The Stoic path is narrow. Few walk it, but it leads to a freedom that most people will never taste the freedom of being whole, even when alone. Marcus Aurelius had advisors, generals, and servants, yet his most important conversations were the ones he had with himself. because he knew that true alignment begins within. So if people start drifting away as you rise, don't chase them. Let them drift. Let nature remove what's no longer meant for you. That's not loss, it's refinement. The Stoics didn't seek to please, they sought to live rightly. They weren't afraid of being seen as distant, they were afraid of being dishonest with themselves. They knew that being liked often costs you the one thing you can't afford to lose, your integrity. So yes, the Stoic may walk alone, but he walks with his head high, his principles intact, and his peace unshaken. Because he knows something the world has forgotten, that the goal is not to be surrounded, but to be centered. Not to be loved by everyone, but to be at peace with yourself. And that's the kind of relationship that never ends. The Stoic does not fear being called cold. He simply chooses honesty over popularity, clarity over comfort, virtue over validation. There's a truth most people avoid. It's not the loss of friends that scares them, it's the confrontation with themselves. We like to say we're afraid of being alone, but what we're truly afraid of is silence, because silence strips away the noise we use to hide our dependence. It removes the distractions that keep us from seeing how fragile our peace really is. And that's what solitude does. It doesn't destroy you. It reveals you. When you're alone, there's nowhere left to run. You can't escape into small talk, validation, or busy schedules. You're left with your thoughts, the same ones you've avoided for years. For some, that silence feels unbearable, because without other people reflecting back approval, attention, or affection, they start to question their worth. But that's exactly where transformation begins. The Stoics knew this. They understood that solitude is a medicine bitter at first, but healing in the end. Epictetus said, "No man is free who is not master of himself," and solitude is the test that reveals whether you're the master or the slave of your own mind. Think about how much of your happiness depends on other people. How often do you check your phone, waiting for someone to remind you that you matter? How often do you fill your calendar just to avoid the discomfort of an empty evening? We build our lives around connections, but many of those connections are not genuine. They're distractions dressed up as friendships. They give us the illusion of meaning, while quietly making us dependent. But when the noise stops, when the messages slow down, when your circle disappears, that's when your real training begins. That's when life asks you, can you still stand tall when no one is watching? The Stoic doesn't fear this confrontation. He seeks it, because he knows there is no freedom without facing himself. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Nowhere can man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul." That retreat, that stillness, is not about isolation. It's about sovereignty. When you no longer depend on others to define your worth, you become unshakable. When your peace no longer depends on company, you begin to command your life instead of react to it. Solitude exposes dependency, but that exposure is not punishment. It's diagnosis. It shows you how much of your identity was borrowed, how much of your confidence was conditional, how much of your joy relied on applause. And yes, it hurts. It feels like the ground beneath you is being pulled away. But that's because you've been standing on others, not on yourself. Now is the time to rebuild your foundation. Each day you endure in solitude without collapsing into neediness, each night you go to bed without begging for attention, is a step toward freedom. You're not losing anything. When you stop chasing people, you start meeting yourself. When you stop seeking validation, you start hearing your own voice again. It's quieter, but it's wiser. It's not desperate, it's disciplined. And discipline is the bridge from dependency to freedom. It's what turns loneliness into self-respect. It's what turns stillness into strength. You begin to see that solitude is not empty. It's full of space to think, to heal, to build, to rediscover the core of who you are. Seneca advised, "Withdraw into yourself as far as you can, not to escape life, but to return to it with greater power." When you master yourself in silence, you don't become distant, you become centered. You don't avoid people, you outgrow dependency. You no longer need others to stabilize your emotions, because you've learned to regulate them within. And that's the turning point. That's when solitude stops being your enemy and becomes your teacher. So many people confuse solitude with loneliness, but they are not the same. Loneliness is the cry of an undisciplined mind, the ego begging for company. Solitude is the presence of a disciplined soul, a mind at peace in its own company. The Stoic embraces solitude not as an escape, but as a forge, a place where weakness burns away and strength is revealed, a place where every dependency is tested and every illusion is stripped away. And once you've walked through that fire, you emerge lighter, clearer, freer, no longer begging for connection, but choosing it from abundance, not from lack. The truth is simple. You can never be truly free until you no longer need to be constantly reassured. Because dependency, emotional, social, or spiritual, is the silent chain that keeps most people enslaved. But solitude breaks that chain. It reintroduces you to the only person who's been with you through everything yourself. And when that relationship becomes solid, when you can stand alone without collapsing, when your peace no longer depends on who stays or who leaves, you will have achieved what the Stoics called true freedom, mastery of the self. So if you find yourself alone right now, don't see it as punishment, see it as preparation. Because solitude isn't what weakens you, it's what reveals the strength you've ignored. And if you can stand firm here, in the quiet, in the unseen, then there's nothing left in this world that can truly control you. Because once you master yourself, you master everything. We often say we were hurt because someone left, because they betrayed us, because they changed. But the Stoics would remind us it wasn't the loss that broke us. It was the expectation we carried. You see, pain doesn't come from what happens. It comes from how tightly we cling to how we thought things should happen. And when life refuses to follow our script, we call it unfair. But here's the truth. No one owes us anything. Not attention, not loyalty, not even understanding. Epictetus said, "What upsets people is not things themselves, but their judgments about those things. It's not the silence that wounds you. It's your belief that they should have spoken. It's not their distance that hurts. It's your belief that they should have stayed." When you expect nothing, every gesture becomes a gift. Every conversation becomes sacred. Every friendship becomes lighter because it's no longer built on demand, but on appreciation. We live in a world addicted to entitlement. We expect people to reply instantly. And when they don't, we take it personally. We feel betrayed, unseen, abandoned. But the Stoics sees differently. They understand that gratitude and expectation cannot live in the same heart. One feeds peace, the other breeds misery. When you expect less, you start to see more. You notice the small acts, the message that did come, the kindness that was shown, the loyalty that remained when it could have left. Because nothing is guaranteed, and that's exactly what makes it meaningful. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If someone can prove me wrong and show me my mistake, I will gladly change. For I seek the truth, not to be right." He wasn't seeking loyalty. He was seeking clarity. He didn't expect comfort from people. He expected growth from himself. Can you say the same? When someone disagrees with you, do you listen or do you defend? When a friend disappears, do you curse the silence or do you learn from it? The Stoic path asks for humility, the courage to release what you cannot control and to honor what remains. Gratitude is not weakness. It's not some naive, positive thinking. It's the highest form of strength, because it means you can face loss without bitterness. You can acknowledge pain without turning it into poison. The Stoic doesn't suppress emotion, they purify it. They remove the part of the feeling that demands control and keep the part that gives clarity. They don't say, "I don't feel hurt." They say, "This pain will not rule me." Let's be honest, you can't control who stays. You can't control who loves you, who forgets you, who misunderstands you. But you can control this, how you carry yourself when they don't. Whether you close your heart in resentment or open it in gratitude, when you live expecting nothing, you stop living like a beggar. You become a builder of your own peace, and that peace cannot be taken away. Many people treat friendship like a transaction. I gave you this. You owe me that. I was there for you. Why weren't you there for me? But true friendship is not barter. It's generosity rooted in virtue. It's giving not to be remembered, but because it's who you are. When you give from virtue, from strength, from integrity, you can walk away from any outcome with dignity intact. You don't keep score. You keep your standards. That's the Stoic way. Ask yourself, what if every person in your life was a temporary gift, not a possession, not a guarantee? Wouldn't you treat them differently? Wouldn't you appreciate them more? When you stop clinging to forever, you begin to value right now. And right now is all you've ever had. So, if someone texts you today, be grateful. If someone listens, be grateful. And if someone leaves, still be grateful. Because even endings carry lessons you couldn't have learned otherwise. Seneca said, "He is most powerful who has himself in his own power." And power is always tested in loss. When someone leaves and you remain steady, that's power. When things don't go your way and you remain calm, that's mastery. When you no longer demand life to bow to your expectations, that's freedom. This is what Stoicism teaches: to love deeply, but not dependently, to give freely, but without attachment, to feel fully, but without losing yourself. You see, gratitude isn't about pretending everything is fine. It's about recognizing that even in pain, there's purpose. Even in loss, there's learning. Even in silence, there's space for something new to grow. When you live with that awareness, life becomes lighter. You stop trying to control every outcome, and you start dancing with whatever comes. Because you realize you were never meant to control the world. You were meant to master yourself. So, expect nothing. Not out of cynicism, but out of wisdom. Because when nothing is owed, everything becomes a blessing. And when you stop demanding life to give you more, you start noticing that it already has. Every person, every moment, every breath, a gift, fleeting, fragile, and infinitely precious. That's the Stoic way. To walk through the world open-handed, not clinging, not grasping. And when you live that way, you'll find peace no one can take, love no one can break, and gratitude that endures through every loss. Because in the end, the richest person isn't the one who has the most, it's the one who expects the least. They left, maybe without warning, maybe without closure. A friend you trusted, someone who once knew your laughter, your fears, your story, and now they're gone. The first instinct? To ask, why? What did I do wrong? But the Stoics would tell you that's not the right question. The real question is, what is this loss trying to teach me? Because every disappearance, every silence, every ending carries a lesson. If you're strong enough to listen, the Stoics didn't see loss as tragedy. They saw it as training, a test of virtue. Epictetus taught, don't concern yourself with what others do, but with how you respond. It has to a groster. You cannot control who stays or leaves, but you can control how you rise. When a friendship ends, it's easy to drown in self-blame or bitterness, but neither heals you. Blame only chains you to the past. Bitterness blinds you to the lesson. The Stoic chooses a third path: understanding. Ask yourself, where was I dependent? Where did I expect too much? Where did I let comfort replace honesty? Because often, loss doesn't destroy us, it reveals us. It shows where we've built our peace on sand instead of stone, where we've mistaken attachment for connection, where we've relied on others to fill the spaces we refuse to face alone. Seneca once wrote, "We must lose what is not ours as if it never belonged to us." That includes people. Friendship, no matter how deep, is not ownership. Every person walks their own path. Sometimes those paths diverge not out of betrayal, but out of evolution. And when they do, the Stoic doesn't chase. They bow to nature, because to force permanence on what is meant to change is to fight against life itself. You see, when someone leaves, it's not the end of connection, it's the beginning of awareness. Their absence creates space, and that space invites you to grow, to look deeper. Maybe you realize you shaped your identity around their approval. Maybe you tolerated disrespect in the name of loyalty. Maybe you silenced your truth to keep the peace. Now, with the silence, comes clarity. And with clarity comes growth. That's the hidden gift of loss. It purifies. It burns away illusions. It forces you to ask, who am I without them? And if you can answer that with honesty, you've already started to transform. The Stoics didn't deny pain. They felt it deeply, but they refused to be ruled by it. Pain, when faced correctly, becomes a teacher. When your heart breaks, it cracks open your awareness. You begin to see what you once ignored. You learn what you once resisted. And that pain, that rawness, becomes wisdom. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." That's not just philosophy, that's healing. Your loss isn't in the way. It is the way. So, how do you move from grief to growth? The Stoics would guide you through 3 steps. 1. Feel the pain, but don't feed it. You don't have to pretend you're fine. You just have to refuse to turn pain into identity. 2. Seek the lesson, not revenge. Ask what this loss reveals about your expectations, your boundaries, your strength. 3. Turn gratitude into growth. Thank the experience not because it was pleasant, but because it revealed truth. It showed you what needed to change. Think about this. Every friendship you've ever lost shaped who you are today. Every ending sharpened your discernment. Every silence taught you self-respect. That's not tragedy, that's refinement. The Stoic doesn't cling to what's gone. They extract its meaning and move forward with more grace. They don't say, "I wish it didn't happen." They say, "I'm grateful it did, because it showed me who I could become." And one day, when you've healed enough to look back, you'll see that person who left not as an enemy, but as a mirror. They reflected a version of you that needed to evolve. And once you learned the lesson, the mirror disappeared. That's why Stoicism teaches. Loss is not cruelty, it's calibration. It aligns you with what truly matters: your virtue, your reason, your discipline. Friendship is valuable, yes, but it is not sacred. Only character is sacred. Only your integrity belongs to you. So if someone walks away, let them. If silence replaces their presence, fill that silence with self-respect. If you miss them, let that longing soften you, not weaken you. Because every time you choose reflection over resentment, you become stronger, more self-aware, more free. The Stoic doesn't build walls after loss, they build wisdom. They don't avoid love, they love wisely. They don't harden, they clarify. And through that process, they rise. Not colder, but calmer. Not distant, but deeper. Not bitter, but balanced. So yes, the loss of friendship hurts, but it is not a tragedy. It's a teacher. And if you learn its lesson, you won't just recover. You'll rebirth. You'll stand taller, walk clearer, and love again. Not from need, but from understanding. Because now you know, every ending is not punishment, it's preparation. And the friend you lose today may be the silence that shapes your strength tomorrow. They told you, solitude is a curse. That silence is something to escape from. That if you're alone, something must be wrong with you. But what if that's not true? What if silence isn't a punishment, but a process? What if solitude is not the end of connection, but the beginning of transformation? The Stoics saw solitude not as a wound, but as a forge, a sacred space where the weak parts of the soul burn away, and what remains is clarity, discipline, and quiet strength. When life removes the crowd, it's not abandoning you. It's inviting you into the workshop of the self. It's asking you to meet the version of you that only appears in silence. Because when the noise fades, when there's no one left to impress, no one left to validate you, what's left is you. Raw, unfiltered, honest. You begin to see what habits you've ignored, what fears you've been avoiding, what strengths you never fully claimed. That's what solitude does. It strips away everything false, so you can finally face what's real. Most people run from this. They fill the silence with distractions, constant scrolling, endless conversations, background noise just to avoid hearing their own mind. But silence has a voice too. It whispers, "This is who you really are." The question is, can you listen? Can you sit long enough with your own thoughts without reaching for an escape? Because if you can, something powerful happens. Stillness stops feeling like suffocation. Marcus Aurelius understood this deeply. He was surrounded by soldiers, servants, senators, the most powerful empire in the world. Yet his greatest work wasn't written in battlefields or palaces. It was written alone, in the quiet of his chamber, under candlelight, in his private journals. Those pages weren't meant for applause. They were written for his own soul. That's what solitude gave him: space to reflect, to think, to strengthen the inner fortress that no war could destroy. And you have that same opportunity. When you lose people, when the phone stops buzzing, when the invitations stop coming, that's your forge. That's where your real strength begins. You haven't lost others. You found yourself. Because you can't hear your own heartbeat until the noise of the world finally stops. The Stoic approach to solitude is not passive. It's not about waiting for life to change. It's about using solitude like a sword, like a chisel. You cut away the false identities. You sharpen your focus. You reclaim your direction. You ask yourself, who am I when no one is watching? Who am I when there's no applause? Who am I without validation, without company, without attention? If that answer isn't clear, then this is the season where you define it. Seneca once wrote, "The wise man is self-sufficient." He didn't mean we should isolate ourselves or reject others. He meant that even in absence, we lack nothing essential. You already have within you everything you need to live nobly. Your reason, your principles, your power to choose. These cannot be taken away, not by silence, not by neglect, not even by betrayal, but they must be cultivated, because if you don't feed the fire within, the cold of solitude will freeze you. You see, there's a danger in confusing stillness with stagnation. Many people think being alone means being stuck, but stillness isn't paralysis, it's preparation. Stillness is the space before movement, the inhale before the leap. You are not stopped. You are being strengthened. Every quiet day you endure with grace builds your foundation. Every night you choose reflection over resentment sharpens your edge. Every moment you walk alone with integrity adds armor to your soul. The Stoics would tell you, do not waste this season of silence, because it is here, not in crowds, not in comfort, that greatness is born. Think of solitude like the gym for your character. You don't train because it's easy. You train because you want to be unshakable when life tests you. And life will test you. It will strip away your comforts. It will remove the noise. It will force you to see if your peace is real or rented. True peace doesn't need witnesses. It doesn't crumble when company leaves. It stands quietly, unbothered, steady. Maybe you're in that silence right now. Maybe you've mistaken it for punishment. But what if, just maybe, if you were chosen for it? Not everyone can handle solitude. It demands honesty, discipline, and courage. It demands that you face yourself, your doubts, your ego, your unhealed wounds. Most people can't do that, but you can. That's why you're here. In solitude, you are refined. You are purified. The unnecessary burns away, and the essential remains. You stop living for applause. You stop chasing validation. You stop seeking permission. You become your own companion, steady, aware, grounded. And one day, this lonely, quiet, difficult stretch, and realize it was never loneliness at all. It was transformation. It was the moment you stopped searching for strength and started building it. Because solitude didn't break you. It built you. You didn't lose people. You found yourself. There comes a moment in everyone's life when someone you trusted walks away. No explanation, no closure, just silence. And that silence hurts not because of their absence, but because of what it forces you to confront: your dependency. The Stoics never said losing someone was painless. They simply taught that pain is not punishment, it's a teacher. Every friendship that fades is life asking you one simple question: What is this moment demanding of your character? Epictetus once said, "It's not what happens to you that harms you, it's how you respond to what happens." You cannot control who stays or who leaves, but you can always control how you stand after they're gone. That's where real strength begins, not in avoidance, but in awareness. Because the truth is, losing a friend doesn't just reveal who they were, it reveals who you are without them. At first, it stings. You replay the memories. You analyze every message, every silence, every shift in tone. You wonder what you did wrong. But the Stoic doesn't ask, "Why did they leave me?" He asks, "What part of me needs to grow from this?" That's the difference. One question keeps you stuck in pain. The other moves you toward wisdom. Pain in Stoicism isn't the enemy. It's the mirror. It shows you the places within that still depend on others for peace. It reveals the expectations you've been hiding under love, loyalty, or comfort. And once you see those clearly, you gain something powerful: clarity. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If someone does wrong, the harm is theirs, not yours, unless you choose to let it affect you." You can grieve a loss without being ruled by it. You can feel the ache without surrendering your peace. That balance, that discipline, is the work of a mature soul. When someone leaves, it's not the end of your story. It's a chapter that shows you your foundation. Was your peace built on their presence or on your principles? Because if their absence destroys your peace, then your peace was never truly yours. Seneca once taught that we should lose what is not ours, as if it never belonged to us. That includes people. That includes friendships. They don't belong to us. They walk beside us for a time, but their path may eventually diverge from ours. To force permanence is to fight nature itself, and nature always wins. Letting go, then, isn't betrayal, it's obedience to reality. Here's what most people don't realize. Every loss carries within it a gift, but only for those disciplined enough to open it. When someone leaves, you can choose to see it as rejection or as redirection. You can mourn what's gone, or you can study what remains. When the crowd thins, the noise fades, and all that's left is you. That's when the real work begins. The work of rebuilding your self-respect, your emotional independence, your standards. This isn't about becoming cold. It's about becoming clear. Think of the Stoics. They felt deeply, but they were never enslaved by emotion. They didn't suppress pain. They refined it. They took heartbreak and turned it into wisdom. They took disappointment and turned it into discipline. They turned loss into fuel. That's what you can do too. You can honor the past, but you don't have to live in it. You can miss someone, but you don't have to lose yourself because of it. When you stop trying to fix what has already ended, you start fixing what still matters you. Gratitude is the bridge between pain and peace. When you shift from asking, "Why me?" to asking, "What did this teach me?" you reclaim your power. You stop being a victim of circumstance and become a student of experience. Every goodbye teaches you how to value presence. Every betrayal teaches you how to set boundaries. Every silence teaches you how to listen to your own voice again. This is how Stoicism turns loss into growth, by transforming emotion into evolution. So if you've lost someone recently, a friend, a partner, a connection that once felt unbreakable, I don't see it as the end. See it as the refining fire that reveals what's real in you. You are learning to stand without leaning, to love without losing yourself, to give without expectation, to walk without needing company. That's not weakness. That's freedom. One day you'll look back and realize this pain was sacred. It stripped away illusions. It forced honesty. It made you stronger, wiser, and more grounded. The Stoics didn't run from loss, they studied it. They saw that every departure was an invitation to return to the self. So let them go. Let time do its work. And while it does, keep building your inner world. Because the next time someone leaves, you won't crumble. You'll remain steady. Not because you don't feel pain, but because your peace no longer depends on anyone else. Epictetus said, "Do not seek for things to happen as you wish, but wish for them to happen as they do, and your life will flow smoothly." That's not resignation, it's wisdom. It means trusting that what leaves you was never meant to hold you, and what stays will strengthen you. So when someone walks away, don't chase, don't cling, don't curse. Bow your head, whisper thank you, and walk forward, calmer, clearer, and wiser. Because losing them didn't break you, it built you. It refined your soul into something sharper, steadier, unshakable. That's the lesson. That's the gift. That's the way of the Stoic warrior. They told you that being alone means something's wrong, that if no one texts you, if no one invites you, if no one checks in, you must be failing somehow. But the Stoics knew better. They saw solitude not as exile, but as elevation. Not as punishment, but as preparation. Because silence is not empty, it's full of answers. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire. But even in his palace, surrounded by wealth and power, he often withdrew into solitude. He wrote to himself, not to impress others, but to sharpen his soul. His most powerful conversations weren't with generals or senators, they were with his own mind. And that's where your real strength begins too. Not in the crowd, but in the quiet. Not in applause, but in awareness. When life pulls you away from people, it's not isolating you, it's initiating you. It's calling you back to the only fortress that can't be taken, the one within. But here's the truth most people miss. Being alone isn't the hard part. Facing yourself is. Because when the noise disappears, the silence starts speaking. And what it says can be uncomfortable. It reminds you of the habits you've neglected, the promises you've broken to yourself, the potential you've been avoiding. In solitude, there's no one left to blame. No distractions. No excuses. Just you and your reflection, the most honest teacher you'll ever have. That's why so many people run from it. They rush to fill their calendars, their phones, their minds, anything to avoid that confrontation. They confuse activity with purpose, connection with meaning. But the Stoic doesn't run. He stays. He listens. He learns. Because he knows what solitude really is. A crucible, not a curse. Think of a crucible, a container, where metal is melted under fire so that impurities can burn away. That's what solitude does to the soul. It burns away the need for approval. It melts down false identities. It exposes fears that once controlled you. And what emerges from that fire isn't weakness, it's purity. Purity of thought, purity of principle, purity of purpose. Seneca once said, "The wise man is self-sufficient, not because he desires to live without others, but because he can live without needing them." That's the difference. It's not rejection, it's readiness. You're no longer seeking people to complete you. You're preparing yourself to choose them freely, not from emptiness, but from strength. When you master solitude, relationships stop being lifelines. They become choices. You no longer crave company to fill your silence. You invite it to share your peace. But make no mistake, solitude will test you. It will strip you down. It will whisper, "No one cares." A1 masses. It will ask, "What's the point? What's 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 the point?" And in those moments, you'll want to reach for comfort to escape the ache of aloneness. That's the exact moment when you must stay, because that's when the transformation happens. The fire of solitude doesn't destroy you, it refines you. Each moment you endure without collapsing builds your self-command. Each day you stay focused without applause builds your integrity. Each choice you make without validation builds your independence. You're not being punished. You're being prepared for deeper peace, greater clarity, unshakable character. There's a quiet power that comes from walking alone. It's not loud. It's not flashy. It's not something the world will immediately notice, but you'll feel it. In the way you breathe more calmly, in the way you respond instead of react, in the way you move through life with calm certainty, not desperate energy. The world calls it detachment. The Stoics called it freedom. And one day, you'll realize the solitude that once scared you has become sacred. You'll look around and see that your mind is sharper, your emotions calmer, your peace deeper. You'll start to see solitude for what it really is. not the absence of people, but the presence of yourself. Remember this, the goal isn't to be isolated forever. The goal is to return to the world whole, not needing, not grasping, not begging for company. You'll meet others again, yes, but this time from abundance. You won't chase connection, you'll create it. You won't seek to be understood, you'll embody understanding, because you'll know who you are, even when no one's around to remind you. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Nowhere can man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul." That's the message. That's the invitation. You don't need to run from the silence anymore. You just need to step into it with open eyes. Because silence isn't your enemy. It's your training ground. It's the forge where weakness melts and wisdom begins. So when life grows quiet, don't panic. Don't fill the space with noise. Don't rush back to comfort. Let the stillness do its work. Let it break what's false and build what's real. You are not alone because you've been abandoned. You are alone because it's time to rise. And when you do, when you emerge from the crucible of solitude, you'll carry something indestructible inside you. A peace that can't be stolen, a strength that doesn't depend on applause, and a mind that no longer fears its own silence. Because solitude was never a curse. It was your becoming. It was the quiet alchemy of your rebirth. And from it, you'll rise. Not lonely, but liberated. There will come a time when you walk alone. No footsteps beside you, no applause behind you, just silence. And in that silence, the truth will reveal itself. That strength was never about how many people walked with you, but about whether you could keep walking when no one did. The world tells you power is found in popularity, that validation equals success, that the crowd defines your worth. But the Stoics knew better. They understood that the truest strength is self-command, the ability to stay grounded when the world goes quiet, to act with integrity when no one is watching, to move with purpose when no one is cheering. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire surrounded by senators, soldiers, and advisors. Yet he often wrote, "Nowhere can a man find a quieter retreat than in his own soul." He didn't need to escape Rome to find peace. He found it within himself. That's what solitude does. It strips away the illusion that your strength depends on others. Because when the noise fades and the room empties, you finally meet the one companion who will never leave yourself. And that meeting changes everything. You see, solitude isn't punishment. It's preparation. It's the forge that shapes your character before the world ever tests it. Most people run from the silence. They fear it. But the Stoic embraces it because he knows what silence truly is. It shows you your fears, your habits, your desires, your truth. It forces you to ask, do I live by principle or by pressure? Do I act from conviction or from the need to be seen? Those questions hurt, but they heal. Because when you can answer them honestly, you stop building your life for applause and start building it for alignment. The Stoic path isn't loud, it's quiet, it's steady. It's built on small, daily victories no one else sees. The decision to stay calm in conflict, to act with honor when tempted to take shortcuts, to speak the truth even when silence would be easier. These are the invisible moments that define your legacy. Not what the world applauds, but what your conscience approves. Because the goal is not to be celebrated. The goal is to be centered. Seneca once said, "A man who is master of himself cannot be mastered by anything." And Mitre did one. That's the Stoic way. To live not for the crowd, but for your code. To love not from need, but from fullness. To give not for recognition, but from principle. When you reach that state, solitude stops being scary. It becomes sacred. You no longer chase connection to escape yourself. You connect because you've already found peace within yourself. And that's the shift most people never make, from needing company to choosing it. So if you find yourself walking alone right now, don't pity yourself. Don't rush to fill the silence. Don't think the path is empty just because it's quiet. It's not empty. It's exact. It's your path. You're not behind. You're being refined. This silence is where your soul strengthens, your discipline sharpens, and your identity solidifies. Because the real victories of life don't happen in crowds. They happen in quiet rooms, in choices no one sees, in thoughts you never post, in the daily commitment to keep walking your truth. Remember this, solitude is not weakness. It's your training ground. Every great soul in history, Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, Seneca, walked through seasons of deep solitude. They didn't run from it. They were reborn through it. They understood that silence refines the spirit, discipline steadies the mind, and virtue anchors the heart. And when they re-emerged into the world, they didn't need followers. They didn't need praise, because they had already built something greater, self-mastery. That's what the Stoic path demands. To keep walking when no one claps. To stay kind when others turn cold. To remain grounded when everything around you shakes. To rise not because you're noticed, but because it's right. And when life tests you, when friends leave, when opportunities fade, when the world grows silent, you'll remember what you learned here. That solitude wasn't a sentence. It was a summons. An invitation to grow into the person who no longer depends on others to stand tall. So walk on. Not bitter, not desperate, but disciplined. Walk with your reason as your compass, your virtue as your armor, and your discipline as your blade. Because every step you take alone is one step closer to freedom. And one day, when new people cross your path, you'll meet them from fullness, not from lack. You'll give, not to be seen, but to uplift. You'll love, not to complete yourself, but to express what's already whole. That is the Stoic way. That is the quiet victory. When you can stand steady in silence, you no longer need the crowd. When you can stay calm in chaos, you no longer need control. And when you can walk alone without fear, you become unstoppable. So keep walking, keep rising, keep winning quietly. Because the world may never see it, but your soul will know. You conquered yourself. And that is the greatest triumph of all. Solitude is not weakness. It's your training ground. Stay steady. Stay sharp. Walk the Stoic path.